The collapse of the Soviet Union has brought some amazing developments. You're about to see one of them. Only a few years ago, it would have been unthinkable. For the first time, former American spies are about to meet their Russian counterparts. As Peter Van Sant found, though the Cold War has ended, in the world of espionage, you can still feel a chill.
Lufthansa Flight 3212 arriving in Moscow. And there to greet it, Viktor Budanov, former general of the Soviet KGB.
Some of these Americans who are on this plane, you're familiar with from your days with the KGB, yeah?
It's possible because
it's possible.
Possible.
It's true, isn't it?
It's true.
General Budanov spent 26 years of his life trying to outwit the Americans and was one of the KGB's foremost spy catchers. Budanov is about to welcome 61 of his former enemies who now work in the private security business.
Well, you've got to be a little excited about this, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yeah, it's me.
General Budanov, Jerry Burke. Good to see you, sir.
Viktor Budanov. It's nice to meet you.
Jerry Burke, former #2 man at the super-secret National Security Agency, advisor to President Nixon on Soviet intelligence activities. Spy meeting spy.
Have you seen the general's picture before?
Oh, I know about the general, yeah. He's an extraordinarily capable intelligence officer.
Thank you.
I'm aware of that.
Thank you. It used to be.
Used to be, yeah.
What's your name?
Tom Rexford.
Tom, you used to be a spy?
Yes, I was in the CIA for a number of years.
You believe you're here?
Absolutely not. This is once in a lifetime.
These former spies and intelligence analysts may be the most unusual group of tourists to ever walk Red Square. But they've been invited to Moscow to come in out of the Cold War to investigate the possibility of doing business with their old adversaries.
What kind of business? Joint ventures in corporate security, techniques to combat organized crime. But all that can wait. The day after their arrival, the Americans begin a tour that one describes as something out of the Twilight Zone.
Well, I think much of the Cold War was actually conducted right inside this building.
It's the old KGB headquarters, where some of Jerry's peers were interrogated, sometimes shot, in the infamous Lubyanka prison.
I'm awed, just overwhelmed to be here. I'm struck, too, by the former statue of Mr. Dzerzhinsky, the founder of the Russian intelligence service.
It was here in August of last year, after the failed coup, that Muscovites tore down the statue of Felix Dzerzhinsky, whose KGB had terrorized the Soviet people for decades.
It's been replaced by a cross.
Replaced by a cross, and that's a symbol of hope.
So I want to say just a few words about what happened to Russian intelligence service after the coup.
Inside, Colonel Yuri Kobyladze is making history, briefing former American spies on the new KGB.
And now the Russian intelligence service is an independent organization. We have nothing to do with the KGB, and KGB doesn't exist anymore anyway.
Jerry and his colleagues can barely hide their skepticism.
I would like to know if the Republic of Russia is still seeking intelligence information from the United States.
One thing that I can say that the activity of American intelligence service is still the same. Well, let's try not to play hide and seek.
In the old days, though, you were with the KGB?
Yes, you can say that. We don't have so notoriously famous department of disinformation department, as you call it in the West.
Now, you say you've done away with your disinformation program. That's not disinformation, is it?
Yes.
That's true, right?
What is true, you know. The intelligence officer never gives you the true story. It's cover story, you know. You have to be very careful with intelligence officers. But let me tell you one thing, you know. We don't do anything what Americans don't do. You know, we are not worse or better than any intelligence service in the world. But we are efficient, you know. And
but that means the spy game goes on between America and Russia.
Absolutely.
Yuri Kobyladze, was he a spy?
Yeah, he was.
He was.
Natasha Gevorkian is an expert on the KGB. Using agency sources, Natasha has written a book called The KGB Lives. It's been published in Western Europe, but not in Russia. We spoke with Natasha in Moscow's Gorky Park.
Nobody can control this organization because nobody knows exactly what this organization is. The orthodox people in KGB are still there. And this is, by the way, this is a big threat.
And now I've got a very precious gift for you. This is the law on Russian intelligence. It's in Russian, of course, but, you know, I think that it is a good law.
But in his straight-faced attempt to convince the Americans that the bad old days are over, Yuri presents them with a slim pamphlet he claims contains all the new rules governing Russian intelligence.
I have seen instructions for installing a stereo that are thicker than this booklet.
Yeah.
Has the KGB really changed, or is this just cosmetic?
You've got the democratic instruments to check whether the KGB or the former KGB changed or not.
But is this the
And there
instrument?
is the law.
It
There
is.
is a
This
law.
little pamphlet?
It is the law.
It's not the pamphlet. It's a law which was enacted, which was signed by the president.
Nothing actually changed.
So it's still aggressive? It's still out there? It's still spying on America?
In any case, it still is ready to become absolutely the same organization as it was. And any moment they can do it. This is the problem.
And these crowns were used during the wedding of Alexander Pushkin, the great Russian poet.
As the Spies in Wonderland tour continues, so does the unease on the part of the Americans, especially when Jerry learns that their tour guide may be moonlighting.
Those were decorations used for Tsar's dresses and the dresses of the patriarchs.
Learning that our tour guide is a former KGB employee doesn't necessarily inspire a sense of composure. She just casually mentioned to one of the delegates that she had been trained by the KGB and sent abroad.
In fact, she may well have been trained by former KGB Major General Yuri Drozdov. He used to run the so-called illegals operation, training undercover spies who may have been your next-door neighbor.
Were your people very successful?
Very successful. Now, Yuri, who even had some of his own agents assassinated, may become Jerry's partner in a private security company.
Can you trust these guys?
I'm sure there will be some trial and error periods here that we'll go through, but I certainly hope to be able to.
Cold War is war. In every war, there should be a victor and loser. And to my greatest regret, I should state that in this case, your country is a winner, and my country is a loser.
While the Americans are wary about the future, the Russians are bitter about the past, realizing that their guests may have played key roles in what they believe was an elaborate plan to destroy the integrity of the Soviet state.
Plans to destroy the integrity, they existed before, some years ago. And we knew about their existence.
I'm sure that the United States, the government of the United States, have played a substantial part in the destruction of the Soviet Union. An open attempt to destroy this country.
We would say that your efforts in the field of industrial espionage continue unabated. As a matter of fact, are increasing.
That's right, yeah. Yes.
And so we say, well, therefore, tit for tat.
Has anybody told you that this Cold War is over and that we're supposed to stop this rivalry?
If you're looking for overnight changes, you're simply not going to get them. I mean, after all, we have a momentum of some 45 years that has to be overcome.
General Budanov then reveals for the first time that the two sides had actually cooperated once before, that beginning in 1983, the KGB and CIA secretly agreed not to use drugs or torture on captured agents.
At that time, of course, it was important not to tell anybody under any circumstances about these contacts. But they existed at that time. Let us say we have decided that time not to use any kind of physical or chemical means against each other. It was the capitulation, you know.
Which is not to say that either side kept its part of the deal. In what was, for the Americans, a wrenching experience, they're taken to Butyrka prison, a place where their captured colleagues once were held and where some were executed.
I think the conditions under which these people are being kept are just deplorable.
Today, it's a typical inner-city gulag for Russian inmates.
It's quite overwhelming and often very sickening.
You're in the intelligence game. People who worked for the same operation may have served time in this, may have died here.
It's absolutely horrible to contemplate. I feel very chilled.
I just told Ray I said my dogs live better than this.
They were the enemy. They were the sworn enemy. And I loathed the system. And so it's taken me a while to get over that.
So it's goodbye, and please come again. Jerry Burke and his friends most likely will return, but their hopes and fears will travel with them.
You know, I want to befriend them and I want to trust them, but trust but verify. Didn't a recent president say that?
That trip did produce at least one new partnership. Jerry Burke has decided he will form a security company with General Budanov.